John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Since your last briefing, there have been some personnel moves that have been announced by the president, and I wanted to ask you about them. One was the president replacing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown Jr. What was the reason for the president naming a replacement for General Brown? And then I'll follow up with another personnel announcement that's been made over the last few days.
He thinks he's doing a bad job, and it's time for a shakeup at the Pentagon. They failed 7 audits in a row. The trust in our United States military amongst the war fighters is low. The president is shaking up the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, of course, with Secretary Hegseth leading, and he has the right to do that. It's actually quite common from administration to administration to do such a thing.
The president, when he swore him in as the Chief of Staff for the Air Force, called him a great man and a great gentleman. Does he distance himself from the remarks that he made back in August of 2020?
I think replacing him speaks for itself.
And then
James.
One other one, if I'm sorry, thank you. On the FBI, the president also announced a new deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino. From what has been reported, and maybe this is not accurate reporting, you can tell me, the FBI director, Kash Patel, informed Republican senators that it would be an individual named as the deputy who was a special agent currently at the FBI, and of course Mr. Bongino is not. What was the reason for naming Mr. Bongino to this position, and was Mr. Patel not correct in making that assurance to those senators?
I'm not sure if anybody in this room has listened to Mr. Bongino when he talks about the past corruption at the FBI, when he talks about his experience serving for the United States Secret Service. This is a man who loves his country and who has honorably served our country in ways that many people have not. He understands the depth of the corruption at these institutions, which the American people re-elected President Trump to shake up. And I think it's quite despicable to see many networks in this room who have had chyrons on their television screens labeling Mr. Bongino as a far-right podcaster. He is not. He is a former law enforcement agent. He is a former Secret Service agent who put his life on the line to protect this country, and that is why the President of the United States has entrusted him for this important role. He's also an outsider to this Washington swamp, and we often see that when outsiders are appointed to such coveted positions, a lot of people in this city get very, very nervous, and they should be, because Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Attorney General Bondi are focused on rooting out the corruption at these agencies and ending the weaponization of government once and for all. I'd like to end with something. As you all know,
James, as you were just about to do.
You know what, James? I'm feeling generous. Go ahead.
I will take it. Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
I wanted to ask
Don't make me regret this.
I wanted to ask about the Macron visit and the Russia-Ukraine talks in general.
Sure.
It's pretty clear to my eye that President Macron was performing a kind of delicate dance, lavishing praise on the president while seeking in his own remarks to try to bind President Trump to positions and even specific language that the president has not committed to heretofore. One of the most bracing comments from President Macron was when he said that the deal that President Trump is negotiating with the Russians must not be, quote, a surrender for Ukraine. All of the public points that we have heard from President Trump, from Secretary Hegseth, and from other administration officials talking about these negotiations have averred to, quite openly, to concessions from the Ukrainians that will have to be made. The minerals deal, the abandonment of their NATO ambitions, and other elements. So far, we have not heard any administration official suggest a single concession that the Russians should be prepared to make. And so I wonder if you could assure us, at a minimum, that this negotiation process will not be as one-sided as the Europeans seem to think it is, that in fact, President Putin will also be made to engage in some concessions to reach this deal.
Well, I think the president knows how to make a deal better than anyone who has ever assumed the office of the American presidency. And in order to make a deal, you have to bring both sides to the table. And typically, when you make a good deal, both sides leave that table a little bit unhappy. I'm not going to outline the concessions that the president and his team are engaged in discussing. These are obviously ongoing negotiations, and it would be unwise of me to impede them from this podium. But the president has made significant improvements in ending this conflict. He is committed to seeing an end to the war. He wants to see the bloodshed and the killing stopped. He wants to stop seeing young men being killed and slaughtered. This has been going on for far too long. The president inherited this mess because of the incompetence of the previous administration, and he's committed to fixing it. And he's made, some of those concessions clear, but I'm not going to get ahead of him on additional ones. But he is wholeheartedly committed to striking a peace deal in Russia and Ukraine, also in the Middle East. Thank you very much, guys. Good to see you. We'll see you later. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. How are we today? Good. During his inaugural address, President Trump promised that America would be a manufacturing nation once again, and liberal pundits mocked him for it. But those critics were proven wrong once again. On the heels of President Trump's Oval Office meeting with Apple CEO Tim Cook last week, Apple just announced its largest ever commitment to American jobs and industry, with plans to spend and invest more than $500 billion in America over the next 4 years. Over the course of the current Trump administration, Apple plans to hire around 20,000 new workers, creating high-paying jobs right here in America. And the investment isn't limited to one specific region of our country. Apple teams and facilities will expand all over our country in Arizona, California, Iowa, Nevada, North Carolina, Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Washington. With President Trump in charge, America is open for business. Apple CEO Tim Cook said it best in the company's announcement: "We are bullish on the future of American innovation." On top of this incredible Apple announcement, President Trump already announced more than $1 trillion in pledged investments into the United States. And on another important note that the American people entrusted President Trump to fulfill, this administration's efforts to seal the border continue to prove extraordinarily successful. In President Trump's first month back in office alone, illegal border crossings hit lows not seen in decades, down 94% over the past year, while interior arrests are up 134%. And this past Saturday, this is a significant statistic that I wanted to share with all of you, there were only 220 illegal border crossings on Saturday. This is a 15-year low. Think about that in comparison to the amount of illegal border crossings we saw under the previous administration.